relief from active hostilities and silences the guns. But the profound suffering endured by affected communities continues. The devastation of the conflict is staggering. Over 65,000 lives have been lost, primarily women and children, while millions have been displaced. Basic infrastructure lies in ruins, and entire communities are traumatized by the violence and loss they have endured. Over 90% of homes in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. The extent of destruction to property and infrastructure is almost unimaginable, leaving most families without basic services or even a place to return to. It would take decades, if not more, to fully repair and inhabit again. The situation in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, is equally alarming. This year has witnessed a significant increase in Israeli military operations, resulting in the loss of numerous Palestinian lives and injuries. Thousands of structures and essential infrastructures have been demolished, often justified as security operations. Tens of thousands have been displaced from their homes, with refugee camps like Jenin, Nur Shams, and Tulkarm bearing the brunt of devastating destruction. Simultaneously, there have been a notable rise in the settler violence, accompanied by further settlement expansion. These developments not only violate international law, but also diminish the prospect of the two-state solution. Mr. President, the road ahead is arduous and long, and the international community must rise to this challenge with urgency, unity, and a clear vision. In that context, I would like to propose the following. First, consolidating and safeguarding the ceasefire must remain a priority. Somalia commends the mediation efforts by the United States, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar, which have been instrumental in achieving the current cessation of hostilities. This should not be only a matter of restraint. It requires robust international monitoring and accountability mechanism under UN auspices in order to support trust and adherence to the ceasefire. Second, humanitarian access must be ensured and expanded without a delay. We welcome the recent ICJ advisory opinion that Israel, as the occupying power, has obligation to uphold international humanitarian law. UN agencies, particularly UNRWA, WFP, and UNICEF, continue to face significant challenges, including delays at crossings, underfunding, and threat to their personnel. The unimpeded delivery of essential supplies such as food, medicine, and fuel to those in need should be treated as a legal and moral obligation, not as a concession. Third, a comprehensive reconstruction plan must be launched urgently. The unprecedented scale of destruction necessitates a coordinated and well-resourced approach led by the United Nations and supported by regional and international partners. Essential services, including water, electricity, healthcare, and education, must be restored promptly. Homes and livelihood must be rebuilt. The voices and needs of those most affected, particularly women and children, must guide our efforts, ensuring that dignity and hope are restored alongside physical infrastructure. Fourth and last point, there is a clear need to revitalize a credible political process. Somalia has taken note of the recent US peace plan and encourages all parties to engage in a constructive, inclusive dialogue that respects international law and United Nations resolutions. Addressing fundamental issues such as the long-standing occupation and ongoing settlement activities and collective punishment remains essential for achieving a just and lasting peace. To conclude, Mr. President, we reaffirm our unwavering solidarity with the Palestinian people in their pursuit of freedom, dignity, and justice. This truce must not be a mere pause in violence, but the beginning of a sustained effort to heal, rebuild, and chart a course toward lasting security and hope for all. Somalia reiterates its steadfast support for the realization of an independent and sovereign state of Palestine with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital in accordance with international law and relevant United Nations resolutions. Our delegation stands ready to work with the international community to ensure that this opportunity is not lost and that peace in the occupied Palestinian territory and the wider regions becomes not just a possibility, but a reality. I thank you.
Я благодарю представителя Сомали за его выступление. Сейчас предоставляю слово представителю Сьерра-Леоне.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I thank the Russian Federation Presidency for elevating this meeting into a signature event. Mr. President, I thank the Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Mr. Rames Alakbarov, for his important briefing. I welcome the participation of the representatives of the State of Palestine, the State of Israel, and other delegations in this meeting. At the outset, we note that while aspects of the regional situation in the Middle East show signs of improvement, conditions remain highly volatile. In Yemen, Houthi attacks on shipping and Israeli targets have prompted retaliatory strikes, heightening fears of a broader Red Sea and Gulf escalation. In Lebanon, a fragile truce faces pressure amid airstrikes and displacement, against a background of political and economic fragility. Nonetheless, recent steps to reinvigorate inter-Lebanese dialogue and sustain core governance functions warrant recognition and support. In Syria, continuing hostilities in the north, coupled with protracted economic distress and grave human rights concerns, continue to impede prospect for durable stabilization. Nevertheless, the vision outlined by President Ahmed al-Shara in his address to the General Assembly in September of a new Syria anchored in peace, prosperity, and development, and underpinned by commitments to reform, national dialogue, and justice, together with ongoing political engagement and localized understanding, merit support. The present circumstances offer openings for confidence building and progress towards peace that should be carefully nurtured. Mr. President, against this backdrop, as we reflect on the development in the past weeks regarding the conflict in the Gaza Strip, especially the signing of the ceasefire agreement, we remain optimistic that despite the uncertainties, sustainable peace is possible. The bold leadership and political commitment demonstrated by the international community are undoubtedly contributing to the transformation of the region, thus providing relief and hope to Israeli and Palestinian civilians. For 2 years, following the heinous attack of 7th October 2023, which killed approximately 1,200 people in Israel, violence and devastation engulfed the region. In Gaza, the cumulative toll has been catastrophic, with more than 67,000 Palestinians reportedly killed as of early October 2025, amid widespread destruction and acute humanitarian need. These figures underline the human cost of this conflict and the urgency of consolidating the fragile cessation of hostilities now in place. In recent days, we have seen resilience and a measure of hope. Starved and traumatized civilians have begun to move back towards areas they once called home, now mountains of rubble and despair, seeking to establish a semblance of life and dignity. United Nations updates report significant internal movement within Gaza since the truce took effect, underscoring the imperative to provide safe access, essential services, and protection for returning civilians. In light of the foregoing, and at this critical juncture, with the promising prospect of achieving a lasting ceasefire and peace, Sierra Leone would like to make the following 4 points. Firstly, we welcome the agreement between Israel and Hamas following indirect talks mediated by Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the United States, and note with the release of all 20 remaining living Israeli hostages, alongside the release of over 1,800 Palestinian detainees, in line with initial terms of the truce. We commend the tireless efforts of the mediators and the humanitarian actors, including the ICRC, in facilitating these outcomes. The current truce, though fragile, must be leveraged to faithfully implement phase 1 of the agreement, upholding the cessation of hostilities, ensuring the full, safe, and unimpeded delivery of humanitarian assistance, and enabling freedom of movement for civilians and humanitarian workers. We accordingly denounce the incident reported on 19th October 2025 that violated the ceasefire and resulted in additional civilian casualties. All parties must refrain from any provocation or violation that could derail progress or imperil civilians. Phase 2 negotiations should commence in good faith without delay, with clear timelines and monitoring to build confidence. Outstanding concerns must be addressed to consolidate calm across Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Secondly, humanitarian access and recovery must also be scaled up decisively. Unrestricted entry of aid through all viable crossings, restoration of essential services, protection of medical evacuations, including to the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and support for education, shelter, and livelihood are urgent priorities. In this regard, we welcome the International Court of Justice advisory opinion issued on 22nd October, stating that Israel has a legal obligation to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza, specifically by facilitating the work of UN agencies, including UNRWA. UN entities and partners, notably UNRWA, required unimpeded operational space and adequate, predictable resources. The ban on UNRWA must be lifted and educational materials permitted so that UNRWA and the Palestinian Authority can reopen schools and temporary learning spaces for all school-aged children. A priority should be the reopening of the medical corridor to the West Bank and East Jerusalem, with guarantees of return for treated patients and caregivers. The ceasefire must evolve into a pathway that guarantees healing, reconciliation, trust, justice, and reconstruction. In this regard, we call upon relevant actors, including UN member states, regional organizations, and the international financial institutions to mobilize momentum and resources for the reconstruction of Gaza. Thirdly, Sierra Leone reiterates that a just and lasting peace is only achievable through a two-state solution, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. The International Court of Justice advisory opinion, including of 19th July 2024, provides important legal contours relevant to ending the conflict and ensuring respect for international law. The New York Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution, overwhelmingly endorsed by the General Assembly on 12 September 2025, offers a political framework to advance that vision. We further take note of the recent political initiatives, including President Trump's comprehensive peace plan and the Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit, and other proposals as input for future dialogue, while underscoring that the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and statehood must remain central to all engagement. Peace in Gaza must be matched by stability in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, where tensions have heightened since 21st January 2025 due to Israel's Operation Iron Wall, with a focus on counterterrorism measures. This operation, coupled with settler violence, demolitions, and seizures of Palestinian-owned properties, together with severe movement and access restrictions, have hampered civilians and impeded humanitarian work. These dynamics must be addressed to prevent further deterioration and to maintain the viability of a negotiated two-state solution. We are concerned by reports that the bill applying Israel's domestic law to the occupied West Bank, an act equal to formal annexation of Palestinian territory, has received preliminary approval in the Knesset. While this may be the first of 4 required readings before it becomes law, such a step undermines efforts to build confidence, sustain the ceasefire, and preserve a credible path towards a just and lasting peace. For the avoidance of doubt, The occupation remains illegal under international law, and any measure that seeks to alter the demographic, legal, or territorial status of occupied Palestinian territory are equally without legal validity and constitute a clear violation of international law and relevant UN resolutions. Fourthly and finally, decisions about Palestine must include Palestinians, their institutions, leadership, and civil society in ways that ensure ownership, legitimacy, and consent. No durable settlement can be achieved without the full and meaningful participation of the Palestinian people in shaping their future. In closing, Mr. President, this Council should continue to support the parties and the mediators to ensure the full implementation of all phases of the agreement, uphold international law, and advance accountability for violations against civilians. A detailed briefing to the Council on the agreement's implementation will assist in sustaining focus and ensuring compliance. Sierra Leone will continue to support efforts in the Council to sustain the present calm, relieve humanitarian suffering, and help lay the groundwork for a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace. I thank you.
Я благодарю представителя Сьерра-Леоне за его выступление. Сейчас предоставляю слово представителю Республики Корея.
Thank you, Mr. President.